So, hi everybody, I hope everybody's keeping well. So I'm Kieran O'Driscoll, as Paddy says, and I'm the Commercial Information and Analytics Manager with Heineken in Ireland. So I'd like to thank Paddy because I think really the combination of practitioner and research is a really kind of powerful concept. And for me, I suppose in terms of both those roles, I'm probably at different points in the journey. So I actually feel maybe as if I'm here to keep Earn company a little bit as well, because when it comes to the researcher journey, I'm certainly behind in terms of the practitioner point. I'm at, as I said, different points in the journey. So therefore, what I'm kind of going to talk about is maybe more from the practitioner perspective, maybe more so than the research piece, like some of the earlier presenters. So from a practitioner perspective, the success that I'm referring to is commercial success. So that can take many forms. It can be maximizing profit, growing market share, how better to connect with customers and consumers. And to do all that by leveraging the power of data and analytics. And if you look at the bottom right-hand picture, then I suppose what that kind of symbolizes is that, look, across all organizations that are trying to compete in the various industries and various marketplaces, not all organizations are equal. Because when you hear about the use of data and analytics, you often hear first about the tech companies. You know, one of the earlier use cases that we constantly heard about in literature was, you know, mobile phone companies using data to predict customer churn. You know, everyone hears about big data and social media. But a lot of this has been around businesses whose business model is centered on data, and you know, an awful lot of kind of startup organizations as well. And that's not really where my interest is on at this stage, because I suppose if those organizations are like a speedboat where they're fast and nimble and changing, my interest is more on the oil tanker. You know, and an oil tanker tend to be large, maybe traditional organizations. They've got an established culture, they've been around for a long time, which means that they've got, even if they tend maybe in the past to have moved a little bit slower, they got a really powerful momentum, which means it's very difficult to change. And that momentum is even more difficult to change, particularly if the organization has been commercially successful, because you know, very often there is no burning platform or no immediately burning platform, so there's no real business imperative or need to change course. So moving on then, just in terms of how did I get interested in this, or where did my interest kind of come from? Well, really it's kind of come from my own experiences. No, I'm not going to bore you with my career history or journey in the city or anything, but in the earlier part of my career I was in commercial roles in Dairy Gold Foods. And then in the mid-2000s, I got a phone call that they were setting up a commercial analytics department and they wanted to know if I would be it. Now, Dairy Gold at the time, maybe unlike most other organizations, they had really good data. It was and technology. So the data was available, it was reliable, it was updated very frequently. Everybody across the organization had access to it. There was zero problem with data and with the technology. Even the systems they had at the time would be, you know, way ahead for the time and would even hold their own in many organizations today. But there was a big analytics gap, and that's what we kind of realized. And the gap was between the availability of the data and the organization's ability to actually leverage that data to add business value. So that's where the role kind of came about. So therefore, on day one, learning number one was because that this is not a technology problem, because as I said, technology, in fact, technology, or it's not a technology solution. If anything, maybe technology might have been part of the problem. So I started working on day one, as I said, trying to figure it out from scratch. Spent a couple of years trying things, seeing how they worked in terms of how we present data, how we use it, how we engage with people, all that kind of stuff. The Dairy Gold business was spun out into a separate PLC called Brio. And a couple of years later, then that came together with Kerry Foods. And for me, that was really interesting and really exciting, because I was saying, right, now I'm finally going to see, you know, Kerry was another big multinational, going to see how did they use data, how can it be leveraged, how can, you know, how are they using analytics? Because they were such a big multinational and so successful, they must be, surely. But joined Kerry, and to my surprise, they were experiencing the exact same problems that we had in Dairy Gold in terms of how to leverage that data. That turned out to be good for me because Kerry kept me on then to try and solve the problems for then that we'd been having in Dairygold. So I stayed there for maybe 18 months, and then I moved to Heineken. And I says, right, okay, a little bit disappointed. Kerry hadn't solved all the problems in terms of data and analytics, but now I'm moving on to an even bigger multinational. Now I'm going to finally realise how it is. Went into Heineken, and Heineken was actually in a worse state than Kerry and Dairygold had been. So at that point in came, I suppose, learning number two is that this problem of leveraging data and organisations adding value and getting it out of it, that it's a general problem. It's not just confined to one or two isolations that I had or organisations I was involved in. It was actually across the board. So like some of the other people here who are talking, they're around kind of between 2013 and 2015, I completed the Masters with the IMI and UCC, and that was kind of where the researcher angle kind of came into it. And I really got to see the power of researcher stroke practitioner, because you're getting exposed to academic theory, which could then be quickly implemented in a real world setting, and then you could very quickly learn, adapt, go back and iterate, and then you're observing and reflecting and observing on the observations as to what the actual effect of it was. So that was really powerful. So throughout the career, getting up to that point, if we'd identified what the problem was, then it becomes, right, well, how do you fix the problem? So just to use an example within Heineken, the first thing we did is kind of looked at all the research. Now, the picture on the top left is actually from Gartner. Doesn't matter, right? There's so many different kind of analytics maturity models around there. The only point that I'd say on this one is that it shows a nice linear, well, not linear line, where you move from one phase of maturity to the next, and you're advancing the whole time. What we discovered is it doesn't work like that. It's as easy to go back and fall back down as it is to be moving forward. But what we did is we pulled together an analytics vision based on all the research at the time. This was back in 2013. And we spent the next couple of years implementing that vision. Now, that vision covered off everything. So we completely new technology stack. It covered off the people there, where we developed people's skills, the organization structure, ways of working. We looked at our data governance in terms of data processes to ensure data was accurate and complete and all that kind of stuff. So we covered off all those avenues. So how did that work out? Well, it was actually one of the most successful failures I've ever observed. And it was really successful in many ways. So if we looked at our descriptive analytics, that whole thing was way better, more efficient, because we basically automated almost everything. We saved huge amounts of money, and it was way better, more effective, because we now had much better user experiences, visualizations, analysis tools aligned to the decisions people needed to make in their roles. So we were in a much better place. And we were using predictive analytics. So data science had made an appearance, and we were using machine learning models to predict and to identify patterns that we wouldn't have previously had. So it all sounds really, really good. But when you look back on it and you reflect on it, more often than not, people around the business, they were still making decisions based on gut feel. It's just that now they're making those gut feel decisions with better data and fancier data. So, right. We said to ourselves, okay, we're now at a point, we've done this, the outcome wasn't maybe what we had expected, so it was time to reflect and try and determine, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how do we get to where we are? Because there's no point just continuing. As someone else said, if you keep doing the same thing that you always did, you're going to get the same results. So what we did is we started from scratch, and we said, right, well, let's look at everything that we have done, and break it down into various elements, and what worked, what didn't work, and why did something work, and what were the impacts, and kind of looked at all the different projects that we did and all the different interactions, and then kind of bundled those elements back into buckets to try and identify for us a framework of some shape or form. So we created a first version of the framework. We then socialized that outside the organization. It was iterated on, it changed and it evolved. There was things added to it, there was things taken out of it. And then what we did is, once we had that, which, wasn't going to be perfect, wasn't going to be fully complete, we came back then and we actually critically evaluated everything that we were doing against that framework. And when we graded ourselves against it, there's a little bit of detail in the different elements, we discovered that actually what we were saying we were doing and what we were actually doing was different, slightly different in some, and in other ones, yeah, we were adhering to it. So what we've done in the last couple of years is we've actually been very ruthless, and we've changed in the areas that we identified that we needed to maybe change. And it has actually had a transformational kind of effect on the business, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years. So in terms of what has that transformation looked like, okay, there's lots of words there, and I'm not going to take all the time to read them. But if you look at what, because obviously in research it's about gathering data as well. So these are some excerpts from interviews that people have submitted, and they actually wrote them down. So if you look across the business, the top one is a quote from a senior leader in Amsterdam, whose role basically is to implement data-driven transformation across the Heineken world. And his views of Heineken in Ireland, where we've gotten to, is that we're basically kind of way ahead of the rest of the Heineken world in terms of digital transformation and using data. So that's good to hear, but of course he's now working with us and trying to understand better how can they replicate what's happened here across other countries. Senior leaders within the Irish business are openly talking, not just when we ask them the question, but in other forums, about the step up in analytics, about the transformation, looking back nostalgically in some ways about how they used to make decisions based on gut feel and how it's a different world we're in now. And there's no point in it just being senior leaders, because across the business, everybody needs to be on the page. So down at even local sales reps, their way of doing things is now based on analytics as well. I was delighted to see that Ken quoted earlier on that 70% of the digital transformation initiatives failed. I didn't have to go rushing trying to change the figure on my slides at the last minute. But the question then becomes, if Heineken has been successful in this transformation, what's different about Heineken and most other organizations who are trying to do something similar? And actually, the question probably is a little bit different, because Heineken as an organization is probably not that dissimilar to most other ones. The question kind of becomes, well, how is it that Heineken has done something that's gotten it to a place where it's different, and what's kind of the contribution to knowledge that we can get out from that? So that leads then into kind of potential kind of research questions in terms of the research element of the journey, because if this was just totally practitioner journey or practitioner-led, the business is happy with that. There would be no need to reflect anymore. It's just a case of continue on the journey, continue as you're going. Whereas in order to address kind of the research issue, as I said, there's a couple of research questions which I'm looking at now. They break into a couple of areas, such as why do organizations need to change course in the first place. Senior leadership has been mentioned a couple of times. We've seen some different things there. Actually, in the research element, I'm fortunate enough in that there's been a change in senior leadership. So it's been very interesting to compare the different styles and different approaches and how that filters down and affects on the organization. There's a whole organizational culture and the mindset piece. And then there's also, if putting all those learnings together, how can we build either a framework or a set of instructions or guidelines or something which can actually be used by fellow practitioners to help them on their journey to maybe take and adapt. And the most recent thing which has been really interesting over the last couple of months is about the whole COVID-19 crisis, because what we've seen is a real transformation in people's approach to data and how they use it for decision making. And really, I suppose the reason for that is if you've been used to making decisions based on gut feel, which of course is informed by past experiences, and that's the way you make your decisions, all of a sudden you're in a world where the past experiences are irrelevant, and you're suddenly left with nothing to base your gut feel decisions on. And what we've seen is that people generally, there's a huge increase in demand for analytics type services and supports, as people are scrambling around for an alternative way of making decisions, and of course they're looking to data. Okay, so that's basically just kind of a very quick overview of the research that I'm kind of working on or kind of over the next little while. So I suppose if there's any questions or anything.
Man, Kieran. So very interesting, I suppose, presentation. A lot of it is driven what we call maybe inductively, or I don't know, from your experience in Heineken, but obviously then you're trying to generalize some lessons out of it. So even the research questions are interesting. You know, Kieran, from your point of view, you mentioned, you know, I suppose, first of all, it's trying to create a realization that there's value in data analytics. Then you talk about maybe the possible issue of leadership, maybe the possible issue of mindset, and then the how. From your experience with Heineken, what do you think was the most important thing you did do that changed or moved the dial?
Yeah, there was a couple of things that we did, but if I was to pick the one single thing that had maybe the biggest impact, was in terms of a framework, the top layer was an actionable business problem or decision. And when we really analysed what we were doing, there was lots of projects that we had on the go, which were really exciting to us as analytics professionals, and we were really moving the game on in terms of advanced analytics. And to give an example of one or two of those type of things that I'm talking about is we engaged with Microsoft 2 or 3 years ago about using computer vision to analyse you know, pictures and videos and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into kind of the exact details as to where these videos and pictures came from or what we were going to do with it, but it was a really exciting and technologically advanced use of analytics. And the problem we were trying to solve was a business problem, but at the time it wasn't a very top business problem in terms of the priorities of either senior leadership or the commercial stakeholders. So therefore, we were, as I say, expending a lot of resource, and we weren't really getting that kind of level of buy-in. So when we looked at everything that we were doing, we became ruthless in terms of prioritizing and only doing the things that were the top ones aligned with what the business was looking for there and then. And that meant actually deprioritizing some things which are important for us in terms of driving on analytics. So for us in our team, it was a bitter pill to swallow. But what we did see then, the benefit was that it hugely drove levels of engagement across the business, and has been really successful in terms of changing the organizational approach and kind of culture, mindset kind of towards analytics.
And Kieran, and it's related to a question here from Adrian. Did you have to prove or show the impact on the bottom line or the top line?
In most cases, yes. No, to varying degrees. So it's not a case that we have to do a business case for every single thing that we do and say that this is what the value is. But it is a case of having to show in some shape or form the difference between what that analytics brings to the table, or using data in this kind of way. So we would be pointing out that, look, this is the way that we would have done something, and this is what the outcome would have been. This is the way that we're doing it now, and this is what the outcome is. So if I give maybe another practical example of that is, if we're launching new products, we'd often use advanced analytics now to inform those decisions. So let me see, I'm trying to choose my words now, but yeah, so basically 2 years ago we launched a new product onto the market, and we compared where we would have put that product into which outlets based on the old way of making those decisions. We then went back a year later, having actually actioned that product launch based on the results of the analytics that we had done. And we were able to report back to the business, first of all, how accurate our analytics models had been, and what the business outcome was, the way that they would always have been done. So that's given the business the reassurance that actually, you know, analytics can be trustworthy. No, it's not 100% perfect or anything like it, but it's about incrementally being better than the way things were. And that's something which the business is kind of come to expect now at this stage. So they will often come back 6 months later and say, okay, we're 6 months in, do you have any data now to show how effective we were at this particular model or that particular model that they were making big decisions on?
Yeah, yeah. Again, we could talk about it all day, and obviously, data is something very close to your heart, my heart. I see a question in here from Paul, and there's plenty of other questions again, Kieran, though, that you might want to catch up with afterwards. So Paul is just asking, around trying to get data scientists and business owners aligned, and the pain points that maybe arise as a result on both sides.
Yeah, so I suppose one of the things that we found is that when it comes to people and getting the right people or the right data scientists, we really struggled. So we've got a couple of data scientists in our team now. The data scientists, I suppose, is the people that I see who are doing, the advanced data science and building machine learning and AI and all that. So we actually trained them in-house. So some people in my team would have gone back to college, higher diplomas in data science and analytics, to actually get the data science skills. So the data scientists that are working for us would have come from the commercial organization. So they're starting with that business acumen and understanding of the business. And if you come down to a different layer then in terms of the coders or developers, which is maybe a similar thing, is because we've hired over the last couple of years a number of people to do that, and we've got, say, app developers, people building the scripted analytics and the reports and our dashboards. It's been one of the development areas that they've had to go on, because without exception, most of them, when they come in, they were saying, right, well, tell me what you need, spec it out. They produce a wireframe, but they're very much kind of along the waterfall kind of way, where you give them the requirements, they like to go back and put the head down and come back with, here, this is what you asked for. Whereas that doesn't work in our team the way that we operate. So it's been a development journey for them, and some of them have taken 6 months, some of them have taken 2 years to get to a stage where we can kind of let them out in the wild, interact with the business, and they're actually understanding the business from the business perspective. Because people development is one of the key things that you need to do, not just in terms of that, but in terms of people's wider kind of personal development. But that's been one of the key areas we put a lot of effort into.
Yeah. Good man, Kieran. So we might cut it at that point. Again, it's a conversation that we should maybe take forward, and it's well worth maybe a separate session into the future, Kieran, some fabulous insights. And also, I think, I suppose